Shalom. Welcome to today's edition of Rabbi Ron in the House, checking out Acts chapter 2. Let me read some verses here, talking about the day of Shavuot, same day in which Christians call Pentecost. They were together in one place, and then it says, suddenly there came from heaven a sound like a mighty rushing wind. It filled the whole house where they were sitting, and tongues like fire spreading out appeared to them and settled on each one of them. They were all filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. What we see here, what grabbed me as I read this yesterday, was that God's presence manifested itself in a very tangible, real way. People talk about the manifest presence. It happened always there, often at times, at different times in the temple in Jerusalem years ago with some of our ancestors. And the priests had to stop worshiping God and serving in the sacrifices and offering because God's presence was so overwhelming. They just dropped to the floor. Everything stopped. I've looked up the word manifest. I want to learn more about this. And it says this there for manifest in the dictionary. Readily perceived by the eye or the understanding. So God's presence was readily perceived by our eyes and our understanding with our mind. Evident. It's obvious. His presence is obvious. There's no denying. God is everywhere all the time because He's God. But then there are times He shows up in certain ways that it is so obvious. It is apparent. It is plain. It's simple because you can actually, what did it do? It said there was a sound. They heard His presence with their ears. There was a mighty rushing wind. They felt His presence. It says that the tongues of fire appeared to them. So their eyes, they saw something of the presence of God. It settled on them. So once again, they felt God's presence. And it says they began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled. And so their mouth was involved and their hearing because they heard them speaking in other tongues. And so God's presence was manifested in such a way that with their senses, they could see it, they could hear it, they could touch it, they could feel it. It also said in the dictionary for as a verb, to prove, put beyond doubt or question. Folks, this is what is so good about the manifest presence of God. We know God exists, but then there are times that His presence manifests. It shows up, it readily comes in such a way, His presence, that there is no doubt, there is no question that one, there is a God, and two, that He is present right here with us. Present, and my body is connecting with my hearing, with my sight, sometimes with our smelling, and touching, feeling the presence of God. And one is that we can't deny it, that He exists, that He's present, and that when He does it in such a way, it leaves such an impact, such an impression upon us. There's no doubt or question that we had an encounter with God, that He was real, that He met with us. And that's what helps leave lasting impressions. That's what helps changes us, transforms us. And so I want to encourage you. You understand that God exists, that He's everywhere all the time. But I want you to ask God to be sensitive to His presence, and that there will be times that you will sense His presence with your actual senses, that you'll see, hear, smell, feel, and touch the very presence of God. And if we can start to have this, it's not being selfish or fleshy. God's done it here in the past in the Scriptures, therefore it's okay. And it will help change us more than other things. And so ask God for Him to manifest His presence so you experience it with your own senses, and that God would totally change and transform you as a result. He did it for the disciples here on the day of Shavuot. He did it in the temple of Jerusalem. He's done it other times. He wants to do it for you and for me. And let's be open to it, and let's actually seek it, because it will change our lives. And so thanks for being with me today. This has been Rabbi Ron in the house, and my desire is you'll be able to say this has been the presence of God in the house. Shalom.